The prairie remembered him, even if the town pretended not to. Ethan Cole rode into Silver Hollow just as the sun dipped behind the rolling Montana hills, painting the sky in burnt orange and deep violet. The wooden welcome sign creaked in the evening wind, its faded letters barely holding on, just like the town itself. Ethan slowed his horse, eyes scanning the familiar streets that felt smaller than he remembered but heavier with memory. He hadn't planned on coming back. For 10 years, he'd carried Silver Hollow with him, through endless miles of open road, lonely ranch jobs, and sleepless nights under foreign stars. Leaving had been the only way to survive back then. Coming back now felt like reopening a wound that never truly healed. The general store still stood on the corner, its windows glowing softly. The saloon door swung open and shut as laughter spilled into the street. Everything looked the same, except it wasn't. Time had etched its marks into every board and brick. And into him. Ethan dismounted near the hitching post, tying his horse with practiced ease. His shoulders were broader now, his face roughened by years of sun and dust, but his eyes, sharp, steady, haunted, still carried the boy who once dreamed of building a life here. Inside the general store, the bell above the door chimed. Clara Bennett looked up from the counter. For a moment, the world stopped breathing. Her hands froze mid-motion, fingers tightening around the ledger she'd been holding. She hadn't expected to see him again. Not after the silence. Not after the way he'd left without a goodbye. Ethan. Her voice barely carried, like it wasn't sure it had the right to speak his name anymore. He swallowed. Hearing it, from her, hit harder than any storm he'd ever ridden through. Clara, he said quietly, tipping his hat. She stood there, heart pounding, studying the man he'd become. Gone was the reckless young cowboy with easy laughter. In his place stood someone steadier, heavier. Someone who had lived. "You're back," she said, more statement than question. For a while, Ethan replied. "My father's ranch. It's mine now." The words settled between them, thick with history. Clara nodded slowly. "I heard he passed. Last winter," Ethan said. "Didn't think I'd ever come back. Guess the land had other plans." She forced a small smile, though her chest ached. "It usually does." Outside, the wind carried the scent of sage and dust, memories of summer nights, shared laughter, and promises made too young to understand their weight. Years ago, Ethan had loved her fiercely. Too fiercely. When tragedy struck and guilt followed close behind, he believed leaving was the only way to keep her safe, from him. But Clara had never stopped wondering why. Later that evening, as the sun disappeared completely, Clara closed the store and stepped onto the porch. The prairie stretched endlessly beyond the town, quiet and watchful. She saw him then. Ethan stood across the street, hat in his hands, staring toward the old Bennett ranch, the place where they'd once sat on the fence line dreaming about forever. Their eyes met across the distance. No words passed between them. None were needed. Silver Hollow remembered what they had tried to forget. And as the stars began to emerge above the wide Montana sky, both Ethan and Clara felt it, the undeniable pull of a past unfinished and a love that refused to stay buried. Some stories don't end when you walk away. Some wait for you to come home. Morning came slow to Silver Hollow, the sun rising over the Montana prairie like it always had, steady, patient, unforgiving. Ethan Cole stood outside the old ranch house, breathing in the sharp scent of sage and dry earth. The land stretched endlessly before him, golden grass rolling toward distant hills, fences cutting lines through memory and time. This place had shaped him. And nearly broken him. The ranch had been quiet for years, worked only by hired hands after his father's health failed. Now it belonged to Ethan, whether he felt ready or not. He ran a hand along the weathered fence post, remembering the boy who once raced horses here, laughing without fear of tomorrow. That boy was gone. By mid-morning, the sound of hoofbeats reached the ranch. Ethan turned just as Clara rode into view, her chestnut horse moving confidently across the open land. She sat tall in the saddle, hair tied back, eyes focused forward. She looked like she belonged here, because she did. She slowed when she saw him. "Didn't know if you'd want company," she said once she dismounted, her tone cautious but not cold. "But folks in town said you were back at the ranch." Ethan nodded. "Figured I'd start fixing what time wore down." Clara glanced around, the leaning barn, the cracked water trough, the fields waiting for care. "It'll take more than one pair of hands." "I know," he replied. "That's why I stayed." The word surprised them both. They worked in near silence at first, Ethan repairing fence wire while Clara checked the horses. The rhythm came back naturally, like muscle memory. Still, beneath every shared task lay years of unspoken hurt. "You left fast," Clara finally said, not looking at him. "One day you were here. The next, gone." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I didn't know how to stay." She turned then, eyes sharp but wounded. "You didn't give me the choice." He set the pliers down slowly. "My brother died on this land. I blamed myself. And when your father nearly lost the ranch after, I thought I was poison. That anything I touched would fall apart." Clara swallowed. She'd waited years to hear something, anything, that explained the silence. "So you disappeared. I thought leaving would spare you." Her laugh was quiet, bitter. "You don't get to decide what spares someone." The wind moved through the grass, carrying the weight of everything they hadn't said before. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the strength forged by years without him. "I was wrong," he said. "About a lot of things." She studied him, measuring sincerity against memory. "People change," she said slowly. "But land doesn't forget. Neither do hearts." By afternoon, storm clouds gathered low on the horizon. The prairie darkened, shadows stretching long across the fields. Clara looked west. "That's not just rain. That's trouble." They rushed to bring the horses in, wind whipping dust into the air. Thunder rolled, deep and distant. One of the younger horses panicked, breaking toward the far fence. "I'll get him!" Ethan shouted. Clara followed without hesitation. They rode hard, rain beginning to fall in thick, heavy drops. Ethan cut the horse off near the creek, guiding it back with calm commands. Clara circled wide, helping steer it toward safety. When it was over, they stood in the rain, breathless and soaked. "You didn't hesitate," Clara said. "You came back for him." Ethan wiped rain from his face. "I don't run anymore." Her eyes searched his, looking for cracks, for lies. She found none. As the storm passed, sunlight broke through the clouds, setting the land aglow. Clara smiled softly. "Maybe Silver Hollow brought you back for a reason." "Maybe," Ethan replied. "Or maybe I finally listened." They rode back together, the ranch rising ahead of them like a second chance carved from earth and sky. Old wounds still ached, but something else stirred too, hope, cautious and fragile, like the first green shoot after a hard winter. The prairie stretched wide and open before them. And this time, Ethan wasn't riding away. The ranch woke before the sun, just as it always had. Ethan stood at the edge of the pasture, coffee cooling in his hands, watching the horizon lighten inch by inch. The land felt alive beneath his boots, breathing, remembering. Every fence line, every worn trail carried echoes of the past, and now those echoes followed him into the present. Clara arrived shortly after sunrise. She rode in quietly, her horse moving with familiar ease through the gate Ethan had repaired the day before. She dismounted without ceremony, rolling her shoulders as if preparing for a long day's work. "Thought I'd help," she said simply. "This place deserves more than patchwork fixes." Ethan nodded. "So do the people who stay." They spent the morning rebuilding a section of the barn roof, working high above the ground as the prairie wind tugged at their clothes. From up there, the land stretched endlessly, golden grass rippling like an ocean, mountains faint and blue in the distance. "You ever think about leaving again?" Clara asked, hammer poised midair. Ethan didn't answer right away. "Used to think leaving was freedom," he said finally. "Now it just feels like unfinished business." She glanced at him, something soft crossing her expression. Silver Hollow doesn't forgive easy. But it does notice who stays. By noon, a truck rolled up the dirt road. Ethan recognized it immediately. Luke Mercer. Luke climbed out slowly, hat low over his eyes, smile tight and practiced. He'd always been trouble wrapped in charm, owned land bordering the coal ranch, always pushing fences just a little farther than agreed. "Well, I'll be damned," Luke drawled. Ethan Cole back from the dead. Ethan climbed down from the ladder. "Didn't realize I needed permission." Luke's eyes flicked to Clara. "Didn't think you'd be working together again." Clara straightened. "This ranch needs work. Ethan's doing it." Luke chuckled. "Funny thing about land. Folks leave long enough, lines get blurry." Ethan stepped forward. "My father's deeds are clear. So are the boundaries." Luke's smile thinned. "We'll see." The truck drove off, dust hanging heavy in the air. Clara exhaled slowly. "He's been pushing since your father got sick." "I know," Ethan said. "And I won't let him take what's not his." That afternoon, the town council posted notice of a land review, disputes to be settled, claims examined. Word spread fast. Old wounds reopened. Some folks welcomed Ethan back. Others remembered only the boy who'd left. That night, Clara stayed late at the ranch. They sat on the porch steps, lantern light flickering between them. Crickets sang in the tall grass. The sky stretched endlessly above, stars sharp and bright. "You didn't come back to fight," Clara said quietly. "No," Ethan replied. "But I will if I have to." She looked at him then, not the man who left, but the one who stayed through storms, who rebuilt instead of running. "This land still breathes because someone loves it enough to fight for it." Ethan's voice was low. "I learned the hard way what happens when you don't." Silence settled between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Clara shifted closer. Their shoulders brushed. Neither moved away. "You hurt me," she said softly. "But you're not that man anymore." Ethan swallowed. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope, maybe trust, someday." She met his eyes. "Trust grows like the land does. Slow. With care." A coyote howled in the distance. The wind carried the scent of earth and grass and something new, possibility. Ethan looked out over the dark fields. This ranch nearly died because no one listened to what it needed. Clara smiled faintly. "Seems like that applies to people too." Their hands rested inches apart. Not touching. Not yet. But the space between them felt smaller than it had in years. The ranch breathed beneath the starlit sky, scarred, resilient, alive. And so were they. The past didn't arrive quietly. It rode in on 4 horses, trailing dust and bad intentions, just as the afternoon sun dipped low over Silver Hollow. Ethan was repairing a gate near the eastern boundary when he heard it, the sound of hooves where none should be. He straightened slowly, hand resting on the fence post, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. Luke Mercer was back. This time, he wasn't alone. 3 riders flanked him, unfamiliar faces hardened by miles of hard riding and harder choices. They crossed the boundary line deliberately, boots pressing into coal land like a challenge carved into dirt. Clara saw them too. She came out of the barn, heart sinking as she recognized Luke's posture, the same one he used whenever he thought he had the upper hand. "Ethan," she called quietly. They crossed the line. "I see it," he replied, already walking forward. Luke dismounted first, slow and deliberate. Afternoon, he said smoothly. Thought we'd take another look at the fence. Make sure it's still where it belongs. Ethan stopped a few feet away. You're trespassing. Luke smiled. Depends who you ask. Clara stepped beside Ethan, chin lifted. The deeds are clear. This land belongs to the Cole Ranch. Luke's eyes flicked to her, cold and calculating. Funny how you always stand by him. Ethan's voice hardened. Say what you came to say. Luke's smile faded. Town council meets tomorrow. Some folks remember you leaving. Others remember your brother's death. People talk, Ethan. And talk can change outcomes. Silence fell heavy. Ethan felt it then, the familiar tightening in his chest. Guilt. Fear. The old instinct to walk away before things broke beyond repair. But he didn't. This ranch stays, Ethan said firmly. So do I. Luke's eyes darkened. Then you'd better be ready. The riders turned and left, dust swallowing their retreat. Clara didn't speak right away. You okay? She finally asked. Ethan nodded, though his jaw was tight. He's trying to scare me off. And does it work? He looked at her. Not anymore. That night, Silver Hollow buzzed with tension. Old stories resurfaced. Whispers followed Ethan through the saloon, through the streets, through every glance that lingered a second too long. Clara found him outside the council building after sunset, staring up at the weathered sign. You don't have to do this alone, she said. I know, he replied. But I need to face it. Inside, the meeting turned heated. Luke spoke smooth and confident, casting doubt, twisting timelines, planting uncertainty like seeds in dry ground. Then Ethan stood. He spoke calmly. About his father. About the land. About responsibility, not ownership, but stewardship. About leaving because he was broken, and returning because running had never healed anything. The room went quiet. When it ended, no decision was made. Delayed. Tabled. Uncertain. Outside, Clara met him under the street lamp. You stood your ground, she said softly. So did you. The night air was cool. Emotions ran high. I'm scared, Clara admitted. Not of losing land. Of losing you again. Ethan stepped closer. I won't disappear. You don't know that, she said, pain breaking through. When things get hard, you run. The words cut deep. He closed his eyes briefly. I used to. Silence stretched between them, heavy with truth and fear. I need to know, Clara said, voice trembling. If this falls apart, will you stay? Ethan met her gaze, steady and unflinching. Yes. She searched his face, looking for cracks, for escape routes. She found none. Still, doubt lingered. She turned away. Then prove it. As she walked toward her horse, Ethan realized something painful and true. Love wasn't won by words. It was earned by staying when leaving felt easier. The prairie wind swept across the land, carrying dust, memory, and the weight of what was coming next. The past had ridden in. And it wasn't done testing them yet. The night before the council's final decision felt heavier than any storm Silver Hollow had ever seen. Ethan didn't sleep. He sat alone in the barn, lantern light casting long shadows across the worn wood, listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch. Horses shifted in their stalls. Wind pressed against the walls. The land waited. So did the truth. At dawn, Clara arrived. She didn't call out. Didn't announce herself. She simply stood in the open doorway, arms folded, eyes tired but steady. You look like hell, she said softly. Feels worse, Ethan replied. They walked together without speaking, past the barn and toward the creek where the cottonwoods bent low over the water. This place held too many memories, some tender, some painful. Clara stopped first. "You never told me how your brother died." Ethan's chest tightened. "I was there," he said quietly. "I was supposed to be watching him." The words fell heavy between them. "He wanted to ride the new horse. I said no. He begged. I gave in." Ethan's voice cracked. "The horse spooked. Through him. He hit the rocks before I could reach him." Clara covered her mouth, tears welling. "I told myself it was my fault," Ethan continued. "That staying here meant reliving it every day. So I ran. Not just from the ranch, from you." Clara's voice shook. "You let me believe you didn't care." "I cared too much," he said. "And I was afraid if I stayed, I'd lose you too." Silence stretched, broken only by the creek's soft murmur. "Luke knows," Clara said slowly. "That's why he's pushing so hard." Ethan nodded. "He thinks fear still owns me." She stepped closer. "Does it?" Ethan met her gaze. "Not anymore." Later that day, Luke confronted Ethan near the fence line. "You confess tonight," Luke said coolly. "Tell them everything. Or I will." Ethan didn't flinch. "I already plan to." Luke blinked, thrown off balance. "You'd ruin yourself." "I'd rather live with the truth than hide behind silence." The council gathered at sunset. This time, Ethan spoke first. He told them everything. About his brother. About leaving. About returning not to reclaim land, but to make peace with it. His voice didn't shake. His eyes didn't drop. When he finished, the room was still. Then Clara stood. "This ranch didn't fail because Ethan left," she said firmly. "It survived because love never left it. And neither did the people who believed he'd come back." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Luke said nothing. The vote followed. The coal ranch stood. Outside, the sky burned gold and crimson as the sun sank low. Clara found Ethan by the hitching rail, hands trembling for the first time all day. "You stayed," she said. "I will," he replied. "Every time." She stepped into him then, forehead resting against his chest. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I. But maybe," she said softly, "we can be brave together." Ethan's arms wrapped around her, steady and sure. For the first time, the land felt lighter beneath his feet. The past had loosened its grip. Only one thing remained. The future. Morning settled gently over Silver Hollow, as if the land itself had finally exhaled. Sunlight spilled across the prairie, warming the grass and glinting off dew like quiet promises kept. Ethan stood on the porch of the ranch house, coffee in hand, watching the horses move calmly in the pasture. For the first time since returning, the silence felt peaceful instead of heavy. Clara joined him moments later. She leaned against the railing, her shoulder brushing his. The simple closeness felt earned, not rushed. Not fragile. "They're already talking in town," she said with a faint smile. "About how the coal ranch is alive again." Ethan nodded. "Feels like it too." They spent the day working side by side, repairing what still needed care and planning what came next. There was no rush now. Just steady progress, like the seasons the land had survived for generations. By afternoon, Luke Mercer's truck appeared one last time at the edge of the road. This time, he didn't cross the fence. He stepped out, hat in hand, eyes wary but resigned. "Council's decision stands," he said. "Land's yours." Ethan studied him. "It was always mine. I just had to be ready to carry it." Luke hesitated. "Silver Hollow doesn't forget easy." "Neither do I," Ethan replied. "But I'm done fighting ghosts." Luke nodded once and left, thus trailing behind him for the last time. As the sun dipped low, Clara led Ethan to the old cottonwood by the creek, the same place they'd carved their initials years ago. The bark was rough beneath his fingers, the letters still visible. "Thought it might be time," Clara said. Ethan smiled softly. "We were kids." "We were," she agreed. "But we believed in something real." He took her hand, thumb brushing her knuckles. "I believe in it now." She looked up at him, eyes bright. "Then stay." "I am staying," he said. "For the land. For the ranch. For you." The wind moved through the prairie, carrying the scent of grass and water and home. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried out, soaring high above the open land. Clara rested her head against Ethan's shoulder. "You know," she said quietly, "this place doesn't just belong to you anymore." He smiled. "Good." They stood there until the sky turned deep purple, until stars began to prick the darkness one by one. No rush. No fear. Just peace. That night, as lantern light glowed softly in the windows of the ranch house, Ethan realized something simple and true. The prairie didn't need perfection. It needed presence. And love wasn't about never leaving. It was about coming back and choosing to stay. Silver Hollow rested beneath the stars, whole again. So did they.